So it's an absolute pleasure
Thank you
to
very
have you here. Thank you so much for doing
much.
this.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. So I have a little connection to Rent.
Okay.
My sister did two of the tours, and
Are you kidding?
No, yeah.
What did your sister play? Who did your sister play? I should say?
She was Mrs. Cohen.
Oh, fabulous.
Yes. And I've had friends who have been in the tour and done the Broadway show, but
great.
so I have a little connection, but not many people have a connection like you. You originated the role
Yes.
as Roger on Broadway.
Yes, that's true. Anthony and I, who were the original Roger and Mark on Broadway, are back now on this tour. He and I went back to the show after leaving it in the late '90s. After it was about a 10-year absence, and then he and I went back and did 10 weeks on Broadway in the summer of 2007. And I think that that was the impetus for then this tour. And we're thrilled to be back. We're getting to work with a group of people that we've known and worked with in the past in various different shows, and they're such a talented, great group of people to be with and to share the stage with every night. And I think that the audience on this tour is actually getting the best possible version of Rent that they can get. So
Right, but
thrilled to be.
There's you and Anthony and Gwen, and then a lot of the cast members have done the Broadway show.
Yes,
before,
they
too.
have. Actually, several of them. Nicolette Hart, Michael McElroy, Justin Johnson. They were all part of the closing cast on Broadway. So they haven't had as much of a rest as Anthony and I have had. So they closed the show, and now they're out on tour with us, and we're thrilled to have them.
All right. Now, it seems like you and Anthony are a package deal. And I remember reading something whenever you went back and did the Broadway show that you guys called each other. Did it work the same way for this one too?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Neither one of us could have imagined coming back and doing the show without the other one. And so, yes, when we both got called to do the summer stint in '07, the first person that we called was the other one to say, well, do you want to do this? Because I think I'll do it if you do it, and we both had the exact same feeling. And then the same thing held true for the tour. We both just, it wasn't a possibility to do it without the other one. And so we've become this sort of odd couple of Rent, part of the package of Rent now.
And it's such a special chemistry, I think, between the two characters on stage. Off the stage, what do you guys like? Are you close friends?
We're very close friends, and I think that that's why our relationship on stage works so well, is because it's real. I mean, he and I are very close friends, and you can't help but bring that to the stage. I mean, whenever you go on stage, any actor, certainly in a long run of a show, eventually, even if it's negative stuff, your private life works its way onto the stage in some way, shape, or form. At some point, it shows up. And so, but we're lucky enough to have just be really good friends, and that's what we bring to the stage. But I've been in shows where, not even necessarily things that have happened with me, but I've seen people bring their personal, rigmarole on stage, and it's kind of funny actually, and when it's not you. Right. Yeah, that's part of doing live theater, and that's, we love to do it. That's why we do it.
Now, a lot of fans, I think most Rent fans know a lot about you. I would say, you went from Roger to Broadway, and then this show took off, this Jonathan Larson masterpiece, and became one of the most influential musicals of all time. Would you say that you're forever grateful, and who would you thank the most for this special experience?
Well, obviously, I would thank Jonathan. None of us would be here without him. Not just for writing this musical, but for being directly involved in casting all of us individually, and he really, it was part of his vision when he, putting the 15 of us together. I think that was also part of the original success of the show, was the chemistry between the 15 of us. And I would say that is the case with any musical that goes on to great success. It's a combination of so many different things, and one of the things is casting, and not just the individual casting, but the collective chemistry of the cast and how that all works together. And that was one of the elements of this show that that contributed to its success. And so obviously I would thank Jonathan. There's nobody else to thank. I mean, he's the guy.
Right, and his family's still a big part of it. Have they been coming to any of the shows recently?
His father, Al, comes to he comes to a lot. He's getting older. He can't come to as much as he'd like, but he's always been the representation, and Jonathan's sister Julie as well. Like they've really been the physical representation of the Larsons. At he tries to go to every touring company. He tries to at least meet the casts. He really just likes to meet the casts, and I think it's amazing. He wants them to have a connection to Jonathan.
It is. It's very special.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another big part of this show, which is pretty cool, the fans. The fans play a big role. The rush lines are always quite a sight to see, and you have groups and sites like Compulsive Bowlers that just blog about you, all day long. So for those fans out there who know a lot about you and think they know a lot about you, what could you tell them that you want them to know but they might not know?
Oh God, nothing.
Come
I don't want to tell them anything.
Give
Are you
us
kidding me?
dirt.
No, I have nothing to tell them. They know way too much about me. Are you kidding with these internet sites? Tell them to go away. That's just to stay off the chat boards. No, I was just having this conversation with somebody downstairs at lunch, and I was saying how I'm actually really happy that I grew up in a time where I remember what it's like to not have an internet and to be a teenager without an internet, and it's I'm not saying it's any better or worse than what kids today have. I just think that I'm glad I know what it's like to live on both sides of the internet experience. And the fans are amazing, and we wouldn't be here without them. But the fact that they have so much direct access to you is difficult to deal with sometimes. So, I mean, that's the bottom line, and that's the truth. And so you have to figure out a way to navigate through this love-hate relationship that anyone in this business has with their fans, but back to your question, that there's nothing they need to know anymore than they already know.
Okay. All right. So we talked a little bit about you going back to Broadway 2 years ago, and the show recently closed on Broadway. Now, let's say 10 years from now, there's a chance that this could be one of the last tours. So 10 years from now, if it does happen, if there's a revival, would you be happy with that?
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, look, I have a 7-year-old. In 10 years, he'll be almost old enough to be in the show. So wouldn't that be amazing to see one of my sons playing one of the characters in the show? Of course, look, the show has now become historic. It's run for so long. It's become a historic part of the musical theater experience, on Broadway. And so eventually there will be revivals of it. There's a revival of Hair right now on Broadway. I mean, there will be a Rent revival on Broadway. I would love to come see it, but I can't be in it. God, I'm getting to the point where I will be too old to do this show, and that's fine. Yeah, I would love to come see a revival of Rent, and I'd love to see 2 other people's pictures on these posters.
We like your pictures.
Thank
on these
you.
posters,
I appreciate
though.
that. Thanks.
Definitely. Now, you mentioned your kids.
Right.
Are they into musical theater?
I wouldn't say so much musical theater. I mean, they're a little young. I have a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. I have 2 boys. But they're very much into music. They're into their computers. They're into the internet. They're into the computer games. They're into what all the kids are into, at that age. But my older son is very much into dancing. He loves dancing, and he plays the drums too. So.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Fun. Now, when you're on tour, do they come with you, visit you?
They visit every 3 weeks. And then every so often, about every 6 weeks, we have a layoff where I'll go back to Los Angeles, and so we're keeping it at like every 3 weeks we see each other.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that hard?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's one of the drawbacks of an otherwise great job. I mean, nothing's perfect, and so that's the sacrifice that we make for something like this. But if it wasn't for that, it would be like the ultimate job. But I have to leave my family, but they're okay. They're hanging in.
Okay, good. Now you have your family. You're well into your career. 10 years from now, where do you see yourself? Someone like you who is extremely successful. Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
I hope to keep doing what I've been doing, which is sort of jumping between different types of projects. I think musical theater will always be a major part of my career. I like to do an occasional film. I make my own records. I'm in the process of producing a musical project for myself. So I just, I love music in all its forms. I certainly think my hand will always be in that in some way, shape, or form. So, and I just hope to be working, which is in this economy is not always a given.
Right. Well, best of luck to you. I really appreciate this.
My
It was
pleasure.
an absolute
Thank you,
pleasure. Thank
sweetheart.
you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.